Hey everyone, Steve here. If you listened to the last episode with Kyle and Tim, you heard us talk about their podcast, Dad's Smoking Cigars. Well, I wanted to play you an episode of that show. If you like it, I encourage you to subscribe to them in your favorite podcast app, or watch them on YouTube, or visit their website, dadssmokingcigars.com. Here's that episode.
Hey guys, Tim here with Dad Smoking Cigars, and I've got special guest Steve Reiter in the HQ today, and this is the newest episode of the Cigar Sit Down, and we are going to go through and hang out, enjoy good cigars, and just chat it up. So, without any further ado, let's get it started. All right, guys, thanks for joining us on this episode of the Cigar Sit Down. As I mentioned a second ago, we've got Steve Reiter in the HQ today on this episode of the Cigar Sit Down. Steve, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are, what you do, and how we ran into each other.
Yeah, so my name's Steve Reiter. I live in Colorado Springs. I was originally born and raised in south central Wisconsin, about 30 miles north of Madison.
Go Pack, go!
Go Pack, go! That's right. When I saw you have your Packers gear on Facebook, I was like, all right, yeah, Pack. Yeah, baby. I've been in Colorado now for 22 years. I was the chief audio engineer at Focus on the Family, National Radio Hall of Fame broadcast, and then left to go help start another radio broadcast called Family Talk, which ended up becoming the largest rollout in radio history. And now I have my own media company called Reiter Media, and I've been doing that. The company's been around for, it'll be 8 years in March.
Okay.
But I've really only been doing it full time for probably, I'd say, about 3 years.
Okay. Very cool. So you're in Colorado Springs now. You grew up in Wisconsin, and you have traveled the nation quite extensively and traveled the globe somewhat, even recently. You spent Christmas
in Australia.
Yes.
I've got a brother that lives in Brookton, Australia, which is about 2 hours southwest of Perth on the west coast.
Okay.
And so we spent in rural Western Australia.
Uh-huh.
Very small town. Town's probably only about 1,200 people,
wow.
which is about the same size as the town that we grew up, we grew up in. Mm-hmm. In the 1980 census, it was about 1,200, and so we spent
felt like home, but on the beach.
Yeah, well, no. So Brookton is inland. It's what's called the wheat belt. So there's lots of wheat fields that are out there in that area of where they live.
Okay. And
so my brother is a part-time pastor there, and his wife just finished her a master's in sociology. They want to do some social work.
Very cool.
As well as some community work in rural Western Australia. There's a really high suicide rate. And so they want to get involved in the community, as well as their church has some Aboriginals that I'd say about more than half the church is Aboriginal.
Wow.
And in fact, that church, I believe, was the first. It was founded in 1967, 8 or 9.
Okay.
No, I think it was even before that. It was like in the 1950s. Because it was the first Aboriginal church. For some reason, the Australian government wouldn't let Aboriginals attend churches until 1967, which is
interesting,
freaking crazy.
How modern that is.
Yeah, I know. It's just a few years before probably 7 years before I was born.
Yeah.
And so anyway, strong Aboriginal community. We were there for about almost, I'd say about 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks in Brookton, and then we finished off our trip with 4 days at an Airbnb right on the Indian Ocean. It was.
You roughed it.
It was so magical. I mean,
awesome.
We'd open up the air. It was nice and overlooking the ocean. We just had to go over this little walking path to get to the beach. Man. We were right there, and
what an awesome opportunity.
It was. I want beach Christmas to be a regular thing. It probably won't be 2020, but 2021, I've already talked with both my brothers, and because Ryan said he absolutely wants to do it again.
Oh yeah.
And then Neil, when we were Skyping with him on Christmas Day, he lives in Minneapolis, and so he was like
ready for the beach.
He was like, I'm in. So then it's just a matter of trying to figure out a place that we can get my parents to that's driving distance. We're thinking probably Gulf Coast.
Okay.
Maybe South Florida, Naples, Fort Myers, south.
Nice.
On the Gulf side. That's kind of where I'm looking at right now.
Instead of a white Christmas, go for a white sand beach Christmas.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying when we were over there. So
very cool. So you and I got introduced, I guess you could say, to each other through a Facebook group, a private one, but through a community that you were an integral part of because you operate the podcast and do the interviews and all of that, called Holy Smokes. So tell us a little bit about Holy Smokes.
Yeah, so Holy Smokes started, I believe it was 2007. I'd have to go back and listen to that first episode with Kay Hidamine. Kay basically is a super connected dude, and one afternoon in 2007, he sent a text to a handful of megachurch pastors in the Colorado Springs area saying, who wants to have a cigar? And everyone showed up. Everyone that he texted showed up.
That's awesome.
As well as some other people that weren't.
They're not taboo.
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually trying to see if I can work it into my schedule tomorrow to record an episode, The Theology of Cigars.
Ooh, very
Part
cool.
1 with Brett Kunkel, who's lives in Tustin.
He's OC, correct?
Yeah. He runs the OC group.
Yep.
And so anyway, at that very first cigar event in Kay's backyard, it wasn't his very first cigar event, but it kind of became known as Holy Smokes. Everyone there said, I need more of this in my life. At the end of the evening, they said, I need more of this in my life.
Yep. And these are pastors admitting this because they were getting fellowship.
Exactly. I mean, one of the things that we had a conversation with my brother about is with him being a pastor, he doesn't have anyone to talk to. And I basically told him, I said, you need to have this in your life. And so anyway, they started meeting on a kind of semi-regular basis, and they came up with someone came up with the term Holy Smoke. And so they abbreviated it as HS, which could be interpreted as Holy Spirit time. HS time, Holy Smoke time, instead of Holy Spirit time. And so that way, if in an email or a text, whatever, if the assistant saw it, it wasn't something where it was like, it kind of became flagged by, oh, you do cigars, huh?
Yeah, exactly. There was code names for it.
And so anyway. It started to just really kind of grow from there, and Kay eventually started a Facebook group. We started meeting regularly in Colorado Springs.
Thousands of members.
Yeah, we're I believe over 3,000 members in the Facebook.
3,100, 3,400, something like that.
Is it that much? Okay.
I think it's about there. Yeah, last time I checked.
Yeah, I haven't looked in a while. My focus has been on the Facebook page, the public page,
right?
Trying to get those numbers up, because trying to get people converted from that Facebook group to the Facebook page has been laborious, because people just
they're used to going to one source.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And so anyway, I became familiar with Holy Smokes probably, I'd say, just over 5 years ago. In fact, it was just over 5 years ago. It was 2014, probably September, I want to say, maybe October. And a mutual friend of mine was in town, and we were recording some episodes for the Eternal Leadership podcast, which is one I started with a buddy of mine, John Ramstead. And so John came down, and we were recording our very first episodes of the Eternal Leadership podcast. And because John was so close to Kay's house, Kay just kind of swung by, said hi, and John introduced me to Kay. Now, Kay and I had a ton of mutual friends on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Ton of mutual friends, but I'd never actually met the guy.
Yeah.
I'd only occasionally heard about this Kay Hidamine. Hiramine is.
I was going to say, if you can pronounce it from the way you read it.
Yeah. When you look at it, it says Hiramine, but because it's Japanese, it's Hidamine. And so this Kay Hiramini dude, and so anyway, Kay, like the second question he asked me, or maybe even been the first question he asked, it probably was the first question. You like cigars? Now, I smoked cigars in college, and they were the cheapest of the cheap because I was a broke college student.
That's exactly
it. I bought a box of Philly Titans. And I still have that box, and my college roommates would make fun of me, but still to this day they make fun of me that I smoke cigars because they're dorks, and so anyway, I was like, yeah, I'd love to, because since college, the only time I would ever have a cigar would be like during poker. I'd have, a couple times.
Traditional, stereotypical guy's poker night.
Exactly.
Yep.
I'd clear out the garage, bring in some tables from my church, bring in some chairs from my church, set them up in my garage, and we'd have, like anywhere from 6 to a dozen guys that I worked with at Focus that would come over. And one of the guys, Jerry Hanlon, would bring cigars. As I keep this thing lit.
We're having the Casa Cuevas Habano Toro, by the way. I had a couple in my humidor and decided Steve needed to try one.
I like it. It's really, really smooth stick.
Good.
And so, anyway, so other than poker, I never had cigars, and I never had anyone that I knew that I would smoke with.
Yeah.
And so I jumped at the opportunity to come. It was like the next Wednesday in Colorado Springs. We meet every Wednesday, 4:30 to 7. If you're in the area, hit us up, because it's a great group. I've never met a more incredible group of dudes.
That's awesome.
And so anyway, I showed up and I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. Some of the best dudes in the world are at Holy Smokes events. Yep. And so we've got now 3,400 members on the secret Facebook group. And the reason we keep it secret is because there are pastors, there are leaders within denominations that if it was a public group and they were tagged in a picture,
everybody would see it.
Or if it was a closed group and they were a member, people would, when they would find that group, they'd see that this person is a member of the group.
Yes.
And so we keep it secret for that reason.
Exactly.
So we're got that going on, and I was probably in September of this year, actually. This year. It's not quite January yet.
Not quite,
almost. Carl Muller, who used to be the president at Biblica, which used to be the International Bible Society.
Right.
He was also the COO of Open Doors and young adult pastor at Saddleback for a number of years. Carl kind of shot me a message and said, "Hey, we should start a Holy Smokes podcast. You want to? But let's talk about this."
With your background, it just lends itself so
exactly.
easily.
And so it was me, Carl, and Kay had dinner together, and then after dinner, Steve Bryson showed up. And we just kind of unpacked what a Holy Smokes podcast could look like, what would be some of the more organization around Holy Smokes that we could build to really help take the message of faith, friendship, fine tobacco, and drink to the broader, I don't want to say church community, because there are people that show up at a Holy Smokes event that they're atheists, they're agnostic, they've rejected, they grew up in a church environment, but they've rejected it.
Yep.
Or we've had Hindus show up. We've had a Hindu in Colorado Springs at least show up. We've had some Muslims show up. You don't need to be someone of the Christian faith or an evangelical or whatever it is.
Or even a man.
Or even a man. You could be a woman. And we do have some women that are involved in the group. And just come and hang out with some good people.
Yeah.
And just have some really, really good conversation. And I even more importantly, start to build a group of people around you that are some of the closest friends I have in my life.
Sure.
So
very cool. So I've listened to all of the podcast episodes. It's there was a period when we met probably about 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah, in person.
Yes, in person.
We connected on Facebook before that.
Exactly. And then when we met at Culebra here in Ontario, California, with Matt and some different people there, Kyle was there as well. We, hung out and talked, and Matt's asking me, have you listened to the podcast? And I said, only all of them. He goes, man, how do you do that? Well, I ride my motorcycle every day to work, so I Bluetooth on my helmet and go, and I love it.
Yeah.
But it's cool because I've learned how diverse the Holy Smokes community is in background, in career, in personal ventures, and where God has taken people and what's going on from Hollywood producers and executive producers to, large ministry names globally, and everything in between. And it's cool that Holy Smokes not only has a network that encompasses that diverse grouping of people, but that it shows that it is accepting really to anybody. If you want to come and have a cigar and hang out, come to a Holy Smokes and do it. And that's what was fun about when, essentially the soft launch, if you will, of the Inland Empire one here, when we were up there is, there were 5 of us there that were hanging out, 4 or 5 of us, and it was just, let's just hang out and talk and get to know each other. It's not overly, tell me about your, walk with God, tell me about your life story, tell me about all this. It's just hanging out, and it's community, it's fellowship.
Exactly.
And it's a very soft sell, to put it in a sales term, of come and just hang out with people and be social, and whatever happens from there, those of faith, we go, let God take it from there.
Yeah.
And whatever happens, happens. And it's the greatest non-sales social time revolving around cigars.
Exactly. With Holy Smokes, there's really only 3 rules that we have.
Right.
Number 1 is no assholes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just, you can't have people that are just jerks coming.
No.
Number 2, no selling. So MLMers, insurance guys,
weed themselves out quick.
Exactly. They don't stick around because this isn't something that they can suddenly start handing out business cards. You don't. If business organically happens from those relationships, and I can tell you, I've gotten a lot of business through those relationships by people saying, like Steve Greisen, thinking about starting a podcast, and he was like, "Hey, Steve, let's do this together."
Yeah.
Or, Kay introducing me to someone, or whoever, just suddenly just introducing me to people, or someone shows up and Kay's like, or Steve or whoever is like, oh, you got to talk to Steve. You're thinking about getting into media, you got to go talk to Steve.
Oh, yeah.
And then the third rule is what happens at Holy Smokes stays at Holy Smokes. So
Absolutely.
no photos are taken that are posted outside of the secret Facebook group unless everyone that is in that photo gives permission.
Right.
Because you don't want you don't want to out someone.
Right.
If they're not able to. Like we have a couple in the Springs area, a couple Baptist leaders. They're nationally known within the Southern Baptist community. They can't be.
No.
They can't be
open about
right
it.
now because right now it's not in that kind of a place.
No.
That denomination is. Now, one of the really cool things about Southern Baptists is at least at Southern Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. I used to coach high school football.
Right.
And so one of my former players just got his MDiv at Southern Seminary, and he told me, Steve, all my professors, all of them smoke Piper cigar.
That's awesome.
And it's something that's known, but they're not open and public about it. And so it's just a matter of if it's at that seminary, chances are it's at other seminaries as well. And so it's going to start to filter down. Now, one of the things I want to do with Holy Smokes is find some Southern Baptist leaders, get 3 of them around a table with cigars in their hand and are willing to go public and say this needs to change. And I like a cigar because it's good for community, it's good for hanging out, it's good.
Change the mindset, change the culture, the stigma.
This thing slows a man down and allows me to have conversations. Like the 3 that I had with my brother in Australia were some of the 3 best. Were the 3 best conversations we had my entire 3 weeks in Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I sat down with my father-in-law on the 23rd, so 2 days before Christmas, and had a cigar on his patio, and he smokes cigars. He's a retired fireman, so there's obviously the stereotype and stigma of, at the firehouse, the guys are going to, go have a cigar. And so he smoked them for years off and on. He's getting more into them now because of, me being into them. But sat down, and it was great being able to talk. Who cares?
Yeah.
It's all good. That's why we're in the garage.
Yep.
But it was great because we got to talk about just work for me and life and plans and things, where to say, hey, Dad, how's life, or how's this, and start a conversation like that where it could be just the two of us sitting, man to man, if you will, but just sitting and talking and sharing life together. It's not going to happen by just being in his house with the kids running around and the family around, but to sit and to talk about real life and, what God's doing in, his daughter and mine's marriage and in our life, and what the direction we see God taking us and career-wise and all those kinds of things. The cigars are the, common denominator in all of that, being able to open up conversations at a level that normally you wouldn't get if you're just sitting socializing. You can get it at a restaurant, you can get it at things like that, but there's almost like a natural progression to getting real when you're sitting talking with a cigar.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, and there's a book, I want to say Les and Leslie Parrott wrote it, called Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti.
Yep.
And,
great book.
And when we're in our cigar box, this is what we're doing, and we're talking. Whereas when we're in the house and we are with the family and we're having a conversation with our father-in-law, it's not going to hit that same level because there's so much other stuff going on. That vulnerability is almost, our guard is up because we got kids running around, we got the family running around, we've got whatever's going on. Having this out in the back porch
drops it way down.
It drops. It drops, and it allows us then to start to become a little more vulnerable. And there's something about having something in your hand, as opposed to,
just sitting there,
just sitting here. What do we? I don't know if you remember that ESPN commercial back in probably the mid '90s, where it was just a bunch of guys standing around, not saying anything.
Vaguely.
And ESPN said football season is coming. Men will have something to talk about again.
Yes.
If we have this in our hands, it gives us just that little bit of thing to do in order to get a conversation going.
Exactly, and it's just great because, I mean, you hear about military families and dad or grandpa doesn't really talk a whole lot about the stories or different things like that. I haven't talked a whole lot with my father-in-law about him and his time as a firefighter, and he worked his way up to where he was fortunate enough to be to retire as a deputy chief of one of the local cities here in Southern California. And he's never really shared about calls that he's gone on or things like that, essentially his own war stories. And we're sitting out there and, casual conversation, just talking. I said, I'm sure that you've got some interesting stories, not asking for him to tell me any, but he was talking about it, since I've been retired and all these different things. And he went in and told me about, certain things that he saw when he was first, on the fire service to later on, and all these different things, and strike teams with brush fires. California, that's just how it goes. I'm across the country now, but but I'm never gonna get. I've got speaker buzz going on from other stuff. Oh well. I knew you'd pick that up too. And I heard at the beginning. I thought, should I pause? Forget it. But being able to hear those stories aren't stories that I'm going to get to hear if it's everybody sitting around together. It was one of those, hey, we're talking and it's real life. And I went through this and I dealt with pulling up on a call where it was a young child where ABC happened. And then I had to go and, answer questions legally, do all those kinds of things that are essentially his own battle stories. But because of a cigar, I was able to learn more about what my father-in-law experienced in the fire service that made him the man he is. Yeah. And it was just really cool.
Yeah. This has been just absolutely, and the really cool thing about it is my wife has gone from, as soon as you get home, strip, go downstairs, strip, shower, put on some new clothes, brush your teeth a couple times, then you can come and hang out with us. Yeah. To, if I haven't been going to Holy Smokes in a while, it's almost like she can start to tell.
Yeah. Get out of the house, you need your man time.
Yeah, she'd kick me out. She'd be like, go to Holy Smokes. Shut down the computer, turn work off, and get to Holy Smokes. You need that man time.
Mm-hmm. And I totally get it. I mean, I was an avid cyclist for a number of years. I haven't been on my bicycle in about 3 years, but my wife would be the same way. Erin would be like, you haven't gone for a ride in a couple weeks. You're kind of grumpy. You should probably go for a ride. Oh, yeah, okay, Thursday I'll go with, my cycling club. But it's one of those things where Not that it's, any negative connotation, but it's an outlet. It's a way to just sort of blow off steam from work, from life. Not that life is terrible, but life happens. And you just get to go and just sort of let down your guard, like you were saying a minute ago, and just be yourself. And if someone says, "Hey, Steve, how you doing?" Chances are, unless it's somebody you know well, you'll go, "You know what? Not too bad." But if they take a second, they pause and go, "How are you really doing?" Sitting with one of these in your hand and being able to go, "You know what? This is the place to do that." You can, and it totally just opens it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
very true.
Very cool. So, what are the plans for Holy Smokes in the future, and what are you wanting to see the podcast become?
Yeah, so one of the things that Kay and Carl and I have talked about is starting to build out the Holy Smokes website. The website is holysmokes.club, and start to build that out a little bit more, build out a back end where people can log in and then they can register their zip code, and they can see who else is in the in the area, or they can be unlisted. We're going to work on a way to try and make sure that they are unlisted. That way, their zip code, if they don't want to be known, and or they can just, or the other option is they can just use a pseudonym and not use their real name within the group.
Exactly.
But that way we can start to build some chapters around the nation, because we have some pretty active chapters in Orange County. We've got one here in the Inland Empire that's just starting to get started. We want to put start to build these communities, and there's no chapter fees to be involved. There's no fees to be involved. Nothing like that. This is grown completely and totally decentralized.
Oh, and it's all organic.
Exactly. And so we want to start having some Holy Smokes in every single community, or within a short driving distance of every single community in the nation.
That'd be awesome.
And really even around the world, because we do have guys that are, we have an active group in Rwanda.
I mean, there's people that travel internationally. Hey, I'm going to ABC country, I'm going to be here for a couple days. Any, Holy Smokes members want to join up for, an evening and enjoy a cigar.
Two of my favorite stories. One, it was a couple years ago maybe, where Carl Muller was in Malta and said, "Hey, I'm at this conference. Anyone in the Holy Smokes community here? Let's get together for a cigar." And sure enough, someone was. And so they got together in Malta and had a cigar in Malta.
That's awesome.
And then it was last summer, I want to say, not 2019, but 2018, where there was a guy in Rome, and he was like, "Hey, I'm in Rome. I want to have a cigar outside the Coliseum. Who is here?"
That would be so cool.
Sure enough, someone was there. 2 days later, they had a picture of the Coliseum lit up in the evening, and they had their cigars, and it was that's Holy Smokes.
Yes.
I mean, because when you're traveling to a new city, whether it be for work or whether it be vacation or whether it be whatever, you can just show up in a community and say, "Hey, who's in the area?" And it doesn't happen every time, but often I want to say,
somebody somewhat close.
And with the website, it'll really allow us for someone to be able to say, "This is my zip code where I'm at. Who's the contact? Who are the people that are listed that are contacts?" And let's get something organized so that way I can meet a whole bunch of new people. I think Kay mentioned this on either the first episode or his story, where he's heard from guys that have said, "Hey, listen, if it wasn't for Holy Smokes, I might have, and not for me traveling to a city and getting introduced to someone, I might have hooked up with someone and picked up someone at a bar and hooked up and cheated on my wife. Or I might have turned on or surfed and watched porn or whatever." This community we're starting to see some fruits of it, saving marriages,
positive
of it, healing marriages,
Yep.
of it. One of the great things is that my kids would say this: I'm a better dad because of the men that I'm around at Holy Smokes.
That's awesome.
And cool.
Yeah, and my boys, because of obviously doing our cigar reviews and at times whiskey reviews and different things like that, the boys will now ask me, because Kyle is known as Uncle Kyle in my house, because I mean, we've known each other for 18 years. We're best friends. That's just how it goes. And they're like, "Daddy, are you doing a cigar review tonight?" Because they know that it's one, it's a fun thing for me to do, but they know that it's one of those things that I get to do as sort of an outlet of, oh yeah, when we go to bed or whatever it is, I don't hide it from them. Do I, light up cigars next to them? No, I don't do that. FDA, I don't, put them near my kids. But it's one of those things where there's an understanding, like with my wife, there's an understanding that part of it is the development of the business for Dad Smoking Cigars, Pacific Cigar Show, and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is a relaxation outlet, and just I sat out here last night for many more hours than I thought it was, until my wife woke up in the middle of the night and said, "What are you doing?" Building a puzzle, enjoying a cigar, and just having me time. And it was the greatest thing. Now, I didn't realize it was well after 1 o'clock in the morning when she came downstairs and said, "What are you still doing?" But it's those kinds of things where she even knows. She goes, "Oh yeah, if the boys are going to bed, a couple nights a week, you're going to go to the, I'm going to go to the garage and just enjoy a cigar." Cool, go for it. And she supports that. Now, it used to be, you've got to change clothes, you've got to take a shower, you got to brush your teeth, got to wash out your beard, got to do that whole thing. And now it's not as much that. Not that she's in love with the smell of the cigars.
Yeah, same with my wife.
But she's more accepting and tolerant of it, knowing that it's something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
And I love that about her. And, there's got to be the balance, though, with us. In our marriage, there's some give and take. And it's good that we have that understanding, because there are times where she'll say, she'll look at me and she'll go, maybe it's taking away a little more family time than it should this week. So maybe next week you can not do as much and we can focus more. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
And so, there's got to be
part
the
of
balance.
That balance. It's part of that balance.
But it makes me, in many ways, more intentional about the time that I get with my wife and my boys, our boys, because I know that if I'm going to have time away, I need to invest in the time that I do have. I mean, taking my 6-year-old today and out here in front and taking off his training wheels, and after 30 seconds, he was gone and just off and riding. I wouldn't trade those opportunities for the world, but being intentional about doing that, that's what really matters for me.
Yeah, so the website is one thing that we're going to be building out. Something else that we're talking about doing is starting to segment Holy Smokes members and start to do small, very targeted events. So small business owners that their revenue is between, 1 and 10 million. Mm-hmm. And then we'll take them out to some, ranch in Montana or a ranch up in the mountains of Colorado. Exactly. And bring in, an executive coach. We've got a bunch of executive coaches in the Holy Smokes community. Sure. And, try and bring some things to kind of help take their business to the next level. Mm-hmm. Nonprofit executives. Take a bunch of nonprofit executives out, so that way they're all talking, getting to know each other, and starting to build relationships, but also focusing on their careers and helping them to go to that next level.
Right.
Those kinds of things where these small curated events, that's something we're talking about doing. Next summer in Colorado Springs, we're going to have what's called the Conclave, and it's going to be jumping around to it's going to be a full day or two, I believe. I think it's just one day, but we're going to have people driving between all the various locations that we hold it in Colorado Springs, and we'll have some local, vendors and whatever else. And so starting to kind of build the idea of some events where people go to someplace and we do something. We've done a couple cruises, Holy Smokes cruises. One, I believe, a Caribbean, 2 Cubas, I believe, and then
everybody came back with quite a few, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. Came back. Came back with a limit.
There you go.
And then probably I think we've done one for the Dominican Republic, I want to say.
That would be awesome. And that's where Casa Cuevas is, by the way.
Nice.
The cigar you're enjoying is an all Dominican cigar.
So we're actually I've been gone now for about almost 4 weeks.
Right.
On this trip, we came out here, spent a few days with my father-in-law, and that first Inland Empire Holy Smoke, and then flew to Australia. Came in this morning, so I took a little 2-hour nap before I came over here.
I woke up and you're like, "Well, I just landed," and I was like, "Oh, I didn't even know you're back." Okay, that works.
And so I'm actually doing pretty good for considering right now is when we're asleep in Australia, and I think I got like 3 hour sleep on the flight from Perth to Sydney, and then all I could get was 2 hours on Sydney to LAX.
And that's about a 12-hour flight?
13 and a half, almost 14.
That's a long flight.
Yeah, I wanted to sleep more, but we were kind of in the back of the plane.
By the bathrooms?
Yeah, well, not only by the bathrooms, but I had earplugs in with some ocean noise and whatever else to kind of help keep the background noise down. But the problem was we were in the back of the plane and there was enough turbulence that my head would start to shake around because we were taking the tail end of that turbulence.
Right. Yeah.
And so I just both my wife and I could not sleep on that flight at all. But took a little 2-hour nap when we got here, and then so anyway, we're going back to Colorado Springs on Sunday, starting the drive back. We'll get back into town on Monday. And then Tuesday afternoon, we've got a couple of Holy Smokes podcast tapings that we're going to be doing. And Carl, Kay, and I will talk a little bit more about, okay, next steps, what are we going to be doing, and maybe unpack that a little bit more. And we're just kind of seeing holding it loosely, just to kind of see where the potential is, and see where the community wants us to come alongside it and what they want us to build and do, and then just kind of go with that. Rather than coming up with an idea and
hoping people gravitate
exactly,
on it.
Exactly. Start to do some real market research to figure out, okay, maybe the nonprofit thing is something that we just do on the side, because right now Holy Smokes is a nonprofit.
Right.
Maybe we build an associated for-profit, and that's where we focus our efforts. And the nonprofit will be towards, just making an event free or whatever. I mean, there are ways in which to get an associated nonprofit and for-profit to work together.
Right. Well, you can go more ministry-minded and investment in other people from the nonprofit side if you wanted to. There's some other things you could do, obviously.
Yeah, and then so Luciano Morales, who runs Ace Prime Cigars, they blend. They have a factory in Nicaragua that blends for high-end cigars, and Ace Prime has their own blends as well. Luciano, I went to his birthday party in New York City in November, which is really freaking cool. I mean, Rick Pitino was there. I don't know if you're a college basketball fan.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Rick Pitino showed up. And I wanted to go talk to him, but he always had these two
handlers.
I don't even know if they were handlers. They were just lackeys, maybe. I don't know. They were just always near him, and I'm just I always hey, what's your name? What's your name? What's your name? And talk to Rick, only Rick, the entire time. It felt kind of awkward. I didn't want that, so I just kept looking for an opportunity to where it was just him, and I could go walk up and say hi.
Yeah.
There were some actors, and there from what Luciano told me, there were some board members. I think he told me when I went out there, all the board members for Cigar Aficionado magazine were going to be at that party.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm going. I'm going to this party.
Great grouping of people to network with.
I am going to this party.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Luciano and I and Kay have talked a little bit about blending, making some Holy Smokes blended cigars.
That'd be awesome.
Probably 3 blends.
Okay.
And then
like a Connecticut, a Habano, and a Maduro type of a thing?
Probably. Yeah. And so
cool.
Yeah. So we've got some ideas about what we want to do, but right now it's still in that kind of early stage where we're just kind of holding it loosely and just seeing where the community would want us to start to do something.
That's awesome. And being able to listen to them is obviously a huge thing. I mean, that's what we've done, not plugging it again, but with the Pacific Cigar Show, we've reached out multiple times. What would you guys want at a cigar event? Would you want this? Would you want that? If we were to offer this as one of the, goodie bag things, does it even have a draw to people? And it helped us fine tune and tweak what the show is going to consist of, because it went from, hey, I've been in the event industry for 20 years and I know how to run an event and put on an event and produce it and do all of that. But from the standpoint of the end user, what does the end user want? Do they even want to have that type of atmosphere? Because some people go, oh, I want the live music and I want this. And some people go, you know what? I would just love to have some sort of, South American music quietly in the background and not do anything over the top, no loud band, no nothing, and just be able to sit and engage with people. And we heard more of that than we did the entertainment aspect. And so we took that and said, okay, that's what we're going to do, for music at the event. It's just going to be a sound system set up where it's just very chill, relax, sit back,
not
check
too
out
loud.
the manufacturers, not too loud,
Exactly.
Get the vibe, get the feel, but just take it easy and relax. But we found that to be, as you are and as you guys will continue, to be much more almost a better sense of ownership of what's going on and how you're moving forward, because it's a collaborative effort and it's other people than just a few guys sitting around talking and going, oh, we think we should do this and hope that it works. But when you get the community buy-in, the buy-in instantly builds the followership, and if you can get the followership, then it's going to be a success.
Totally.
So, very cool. So, family life.
Yes.
What's family life consist of? You've mentioned your wife.
Yes.
Kids.
Yeah, we got 2 boys, 15 and 13. And, so been married now for, we got married in 2001, so 18 years now. And, it's not something that has gone easy because my wife has gone through some massive health challenges.
We were talking before this about that.
Yeah, and so it's something where she was diagnosed with autoimmune stuff. Probably I'd say year 2 or actually year 3 in our marriage. We knew she had some autoimmune stuff going on, but she wasn't actually fully diagnosed until year 3. And it was 2014, she was diagnosed with pulmonary hypertension, which is basically blood pressure from the lungs pushing back into the heart.
Right.
It nearly killed her in 2014. And she's on some meds right now with that, and we're constantly looking for new treatments, new therapies, because the meds that she is on eventually stop working, and so it eventually comes to a point where.
So does your body just adapt beyond it?
Exactly. So they just keep increasing the meds, increasing the meds till there's no effect, and then it's either a lung transplant or she dies. Which is a massive, massive surgery. And so,
yes, and I can understand that one because my cousin, who's about 6 years younger than me, has cystic fibrosis, and January 2nd, so in just a few days here, will be the 1-year anniversary of a successful double lung transplant.
Nice. That's cool.
Which was a total God thing, and she gives all the glory to God for it.
Yeah.
But being able to see her through that journey, because she, as God planned it for trust and to show how powerful He is, she was just about at her end and got a call while her sister was with her the morning of January 2nd. We have your lungs. Come down and let's operate as long as we know they're completely viable. And everything has gone phenomenally well. Now, she's had some other health setbacks since then, but I understand from at least a cursory perspective the intense undertaking that is for a surgery and for an operation. And obviously it involves one person passing away in order for the life to continue. And so it's not a minor thing.
No. With my health journey, I have really gotten into the whole biohacking idea. So it's basically taking your biology and tweaking the environment inside and around you in order to elevate yourself and make you healthier, more stronger, faster, thinking faster, sleeping better, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm listening to this stuff that's very cutting edge health stuff. And there's stuff coming down the pike that I have no doubt that will eventually eliminate the need for the lung transplant.
Yeah.
Like right now, pluripotent stem cells hold a lot of potential in terms of regenerating our health.
Wow.
So you take the best stem cells from a placenta or an umbilical cord, you multiply them because they're pluripotent. They can go anywhere in the body and find where repairs need to be made and make repairs.
Yep.
Unfortunately, right now at this point, there was a study, and it was only one study in Canada that didn't show any improvement with pulmonary hypertension. I'm confident at some point it's going to get fixed.
Fine-tuning, tweaking here and there, God will reveal it.
It's just a matter of trying to keep her healthy enough that she's going to be able to catch that breakthrough that comes through when it happens.
Right.
So she doesn't need the lung transplant.
Yeah.
But
because then there's a whole nother domino effect of things, immunosuppressants for the rest of her life and all these other things, and there could be side effects. One that my cousin is going through, where essentially there's it's a form of cancer, essentially, where she's got lesions on her femur and different things like that, which is very unfortunate. But she takes it from the perspective of, God gave me these lungs. He got me to that point. He's going to get me through this. And those obviously aren't super common that they happen.
Yeah.
But with the advances of science and everything that's going on, like you, I see that coming in the future as being something that isn't even a concern anymore, of even needing to go through the whole lung transplant process, or just even having to the recovery and sustainability afterwards.
Yeah.
So very cool. Well, I'm going to take a cue from you and what you do on your Holy Smokes podcast, and I intentionally didn't mention this even though we were talking before. So, and this is going to be either in January, February, possibly February this airs, so your podcast will actually air first probably with your questions. But if you could have a cigar with anyone, and I won't exclude Jesus, but if you could have, I'll break the Holy Smoke rule on that one. If you could have a cigar with any 3 people, who would they be?
All right, so this is who I am going to have as my 3 Holy Smokes. 3 people. Number 1, we were talking about him before we started, Branch Rickey.
Yes.
Branch Rickey, for those people that don't know, Branch was the general manager for the Brooklyn Dodgers and signed Jackie Robinson. Branch was a deep man of faith.
Yep.
Loved cigars.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I mean, he there are so many pictures of him with cigars.
Constant.
It's like it's wonderful.
Yep.
Absolutely. He was an innovator. He was the president, I believe he was the president and GM of the Brooklyn Dodgers. But before that, he was the president and GM of the St. Louis Cardinals, which in the 1920s and 30s, St. Louis Cardinals, I think 30s is when he went to the Cardinals.
Started as the Browns.
No. The Cardinals and the Browns were 2 separate teams.
Oh, were they?
Yep.
I thought they just did a name change.
Nope. The Browns ended up moving to Baltimore and becoming the Orioles. Because St. Louis in the 1920s and 30s was a small market. It was St. Louis was the West.
Yeah.
In the 1920s and 30s.
Yeah.
I mean, LA. There was no real way other than train to get to Los Angeles and San Francisco, and it was a trek. It was a long voyage.
Yep.
And so at the time, in the 20s and 30s, St. Louis was on the very far western part of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, because life was in New York.
Exactly. And so Branch, when he was with the St. Louis Browns before that, he realized that he needed to he basically created the farm system. In order to try and compete against New York and try and compete against Boston and try and compete against those teams
get young recruits.
in the Northeast.
Yep.
He started to kind of build the farm system to start to train up those players, train them in the Browns and Cardinals way. And in the 30s, the St. Louis Cardinals were a dynasty. I mean, Rogers Hornsby is one of the greatest batters in Major League history.
Yep.
And so he was found through Branch Rickey's farm system.
Yep.
And so he was an innovator. He was a dedicated exec, a deep man of faith, and a cigar guy. Branch Rickey is without question my number 1. My number 2 is someone who is not a man of faith, but was such a smart and witty guy that I would just love to have a conversation with him. And that's Mark Twain. Also a big cigar guy.
Yes.
Yes,
very big.
Yeah.
And there is a Mark Twain cigar as well.
Yeah. Yep.
But obviously not while he was alive was it created. But yeah, Samuel Clemens.
Yep. He's just got so many great quotes. I mean, I don't think he was the one that actually, from what I've seen, he wasn't the one that came up with this quote, but he made it famous. There are 3 types of lies: lies, damned lies, and statistics. And it's the truth. I mean, and when you look at the way in which a study, you can make a study say anything that you wanted to say.
Oh, absolutely.
You can, in terms of, like I remember one time there was a study that said, you can help ward off cancer by smelling farts.
What? How does that make sense? The methane gas is going to kill it? I mean,
it's something, and there are all kinds of studies where it's never duplicated, but it's just one single study, and it just so happens
and that's their finding.
Exactly. So that's one. Another one, he's got a bunch about Congress, just a bunch. So what is it? Suppose you have a moron, and suppose you have a congressman. But I repeat myself.
Exactly, and especially in today's culture.
The guys, I would just love to have a conversation with Mark Twain. And then my third one, I kind of, it couldn't be one person; it'd have to be my brothers.
Very
So I kind of combine them as into a single group, my brothers.
Sure.
And one, because my brother Ryan is almost as big of a Branch Rickey fan as I am.
And
in
so you'd
fact,
have to include him.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And in fact, his wife has a cousin who is the great-great-grandnephew of Branch Rickey, and his name is Branch Rickey.
How cool!
And so I now have an access point to get to the family if I ever want to do any kind of, like, I have an idea of doing a documentary at some point, but starting out with a podcast radio documentary, if you will, talking about Branch Rickey's life and talking about his stories, where I get the historians that have written about him and kind of craft his story in podcast form. It's something I'm going to do at some point down the road. It might be.
Does that Branch Rickey enjoy cigars at all?
I don't know. I'll have to ask Ryan. My brother.
That would be an interesting.
Oh yeah. And in fact, my brother is friends with Branch Rickey on Facebook.
How cool!
And it's kind of funny to see Branch Rickey posting on my brother's
and that many generations down.
Yeah, exactly. So then my brother Neil, he would just, I know for a fact he has that same kind of Mark Twain wit and sharp mind, and so he would absolutely just love to have a conversation with Mark Twain. So
very cool.
Yeah,
good 4 people, 3 selections we'll call it. So you're about halfway into the cigar. What are your thoughts on it now?
I like it. It's just consistent, nice and smooth,
easy draw, good flavors.
Yep.
Now, what type of cigar do you typically gravitate towards, and how did you get into cigars?
So I typically gravitate towards Maduros.
Okay.
For my palate, it just goes well with
full flavor, a little bit of spice.
Exactly. And for me, after I'm done with a Maduro, there's like if I go with a Connecticut wrapper, it's just there's just something in my tongue that just it's almost just bites. It just doesn't sit well with me. And so I'm typically a Maduro guy.
Okay.
And so for how did I get into cigars? College with the Philly Titans, and then with the poker nights at my house, and then with Holy Smokes, I just started to kind of just check out all these various blends and see what I liked the best. And Maduros probably Maduros are at the top, and like Undercrown. Their Maduro.
The sun-grown Maduro, or just the standard Maduro?
Just the standard Maduro is one I like. I like the CAO flatheads. That just has a great flavor for me.
You've had quite a few of those 660s on podcasts.
I have. Yeah, I got a bunch on Cigar Bid, and I burned through
Dangerous
them.
place.
Yes. And then probably one of my favorites, my favorite Maduros, is the H. Upmann 1841 Reserve Maduros.
Nice.
Those are just it's probably, I say, my favorite. Like when we were at the Inland Empire one, a Holy Smoke, Kyle asked me for my top 2, and that was one that I thought about afterwards. I was like, oh, the H. Upmann 1841 Reserve Maduros. Yeah, that's easily my favorite Maduro.
Now, what is your number one? Would that be it, or what is your, right now, at least with your palate or experience wise, what's your number one cigar?
So I'd say that's one of them. I really don't see. I have a buddy of mine. His name's Owen Hill. He's a state senator in Colorado. Holy Smoker. I love Owen. I'll have him on the Holy Smokes podcast at some point in January or February when I get back.
Nice.
Owen has a saying. I've asked Owen, so what's your favorite cigar? And every single time, a typical politician answer.
The one I'm currently smoking.
Exactly. The cigar that I'm smoking. I'm like, dude, shut up, man. Seriously, come on. What's
narrow it down. What is one? Name one.
And I can't give one. I can't give, because it totally depends on just what I'm in the mood for.
Sure.
Like with the Holy Smokes podcast, we've gotten a bunch of cigars from Illusione Cigars, and their Ultra is outstanding. I mean, it's that one is a great one.
You've also had the one-off that you like a lot.
Yep, the one-off was the first cigar that I fell in love with. So Jerry Hanlon, the guy from Focus, the head of broadcast engineering, he brought over a one-off in 2002, 2003, I think it was, probably. Might have been 2004. And he brought me one, and I was like, this is my favorite cigar that I've ever had. and one was the flavor. It was just a great flavor. I like Nicaraguans.
I love Nicaraguans.
Nicaraguans are probably overall my favorite. which, if I remember right, the 1841 Reserve Maduro is mainly Nicaraguan.
Okay.
If I remember looking at Cigar International. I'm like, that's probably why I like it so much.
There you go.
And but the one-off, it's a little bit lighter stick than obviously than Maduro, but the flavor is great, and that orange peace symbol on that cigar is
bright orange.
I freaking just love that. There's something that's just, if a cigar is a good tasting cigar, but it has a band that I absolutely love, there's something just
makes
cool
it even
about
better.
it. Oh, absolutely.
Yep. Well, I mean, just a basic band, you can look and you go, whatever. And a lot of boutiques and mainline have gone much more colorful, hyper colors, neon colors. I mean, you can think about like the, of course, I'm drawing a blank on it, but there's one put out by Espinosa, something numb, not wonderfully numb. I'm blanking on what it's called, but it's just got colors, and it's literally a psychedelic looking band. And you look at it, and I think it's called Comfortably Numb. And
that's Pink Floyd is probably one of my favorite bands of all time.
And the colors and everything on it, I mean, it stands out. It just pops. And it's one of those that you look at and you go, okay, yeah, I could see why somebody, if they're walking through a humidor, we're looking, go, just because it looks cool, I got to try it.
Comfortably Numb. I'm gonna have to look that one up. I'm gonna have to get one, because when I was in high school, my high school art teacher, Ken Ura, everyone called him KY. Every Friday was Floyd Friday.
That's awesome.
Every
in the class
single
playing
Friday.
music?
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we could bring in our cassettes and whatever we wanted to listen to. We could
Many of our watchers may not be old enough to know what a cassette is.
Yes. Yes.
And how a pencil relates to it.
And so anyway, every Friday was Floyd Friday. And so he really instilled in us a love of Pink Floyd, and so
that's awesome.
The idea that there's a cigar called Comfortably Numb, that one might become a favorite.
There you go. You never know. Perfect. Well, how can people connect with you? How can they find you? Holy Smokes, where can people get in contact should they want to find a local Holy Smokes near them and or connect with you?
Yeah, so Holy Smokes, you can go to the website, holysmokes.club. That's holysmokes.club. We have a Facebook page. I believe it's Holy Smokes Cigar Club. Facebook.com/Holy Smokes Cigar Club, I believe.
That's what it is, yeah.
Yeah, if you just go and you look for Holy Smokes in Facebook and you find the one that has the cover photo where it says faith, friendship, find tobacco and drink, that's the one.
Glass of whiskey with the wing logo on it, which is really cool.
Yeah, Steve Greisen was the one that designed that really logo. Cool. And so those are probably the two ways. And if you want to get into the secret Facebook group, you can just send us a message through the Holy Smokes Facebook page, and then I'll send you a friend request and add you in. And no offense if someone just decides to drop me as a friend after you're in. It doesn't matter to me.
There you go.
And because unfortunately there's no way to get in without a friend actually sending you an invite. So I've tried to get a link to the club, and then I've had some people that have had success by facebook.com/groups/Holy Smokes, I believe. Maybe Holy Smokes Club, and they can submit a request. I've successfully brought someone in that way, but most people
they got to dig deep
can't.
to find that.
Exactly, and you can't post. You have to use that URL within a web browser, and not everyone is still able to get in. So it's one of those things that, unfortunately, because of the secret nature. But as we build out the website a little bit more, you just go to that, and then we'll have a back end. Where we'll eventually migrate people from Facebook to trying to keep it central within the website for those announcements, because so often in Facebook, you're at the mercy of whatever Facebook wants to put in your feed,
whatever algorithm they decide to use for the day.
Exactly, and if someone's having an event, you often may not find out about that event until like a day or two afterwards,
unless they invite you, and to invite that many people is laborious.
And so one of the things we want to do within the website is to be able to just send people a message within a 15-mile, 20-mile radius, 50-mile radius, whatever. If it's
We're meeting up here on this day.
Exactly. Exactly. And then boom, you'll get a message through the website to kind of say, hey, Holy Smoke in Denver, or Holy Smoke in Pasadena, or Holy Smoke in wherever the Hamptons or whatever, wherever, Portland, Maine, and yeah.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sitting down and enjoying a good cigar and being on this episode.
Thanks, bud.
All right, guys. I'm Tim with Dad Smoking Cigars. This has been Steve Reiter. This has been this month's episode of the Cigar Sit Down. As always, we'll see you.